Welcome everybody once again. This is Rafa coming to you with Mystic Times. Today I'm very happy to be joined once again by my beautiful friend, Lindsey Scharmyn. We're going to have a fantastic conversation on the idea of past lives and healing them and the effect that those past lives can have on our current incarnation. So I'm very excited to have this conversation with you. How are you, Lindsey?
I'm so good. I'm very excited to share this. It's actually such a beautiful aspect of how we can heal ourselves and change our lives and the world too. So thank you for having me and to talk about this.
Yeah, awesome. I'm very excited as well. Last time we were talking about this at the very end, and I thought it would be a great idea to pick up that thread. And so first, let's maybe I don't know. I'm very bad at doing the structured conversation, but I'm going to try to guide the thing by bringing up the fact that you do tarot readings in connection with past lives. So maybe we could pick up there and see where everything goes.
Yeah. And I don't know if I mentioned this the last time we spoke, Rafa, but I didn't do past life tarot readings most of my life. So I've been doing tarot I just calculated it yesterday, actually. It's 28 years. So nearly 3 decades I've been reading tarot. I've been using the same deck the whole time. I use the same deck. So I'm very, very familiar with that deck, and I'm very much not familiar with any other deck. And I also, I do tarot readings the way, I'll say I started doing it the way that I was taught. And the way that I was taught is just actually one reading I received from one person. And that's what started me. I went and bought the same deck, and then I started doing readings in the exact same way. And, it's changed over the years because I have just followed my intuition and guidance from my connection to my guides and my allies of how best to do reading. So it's sort of morphed a little bit, right? But it's kind of structured on this way that I originally learned. I've never taken a class. I've never seen other people really even do readings. I don't know what other people do. I have no idea if the way I do tarot readings is anything like what other people do. So every once in a while I get someone who's like, oh, you're like supposed to do it like this, or I've seen people do it like this, and I'm like, I mean, that's just not how I do it. So there's something in this that is very much me. This is just kind of how I work. I just kind of pick something up and run with it, and I trust that guidance and intuition. But there's something in that allows me to then be also more flexible, I think, because I was never given this like rigid set of rules, or that this is what it is and this is how it has to be. And I'm not, constricted by that. And I think this is part of why my guides and my allies this year, so after 28 years of reading tarot, came to me and said, you're going to start doing past life tarot readings. And when they said that, I was like, I don't know how to do that. And they're like, well, you don't know how to do tarot either, technically, right? No one taught you really. Like you didn't, study and go find the books and take the classes and have these teachers or anything. So what's the difference? And I was like, that's a good point. And, everything else I've picked up and used as healing tools has been similar. So I kind of am always a little bit begrudging, starting something new is always like, there's doubt and there's like, I don't know. And, am I doing it right? And, but they decided to just kind of throw me into the fire, because when they told me that I was going to start doing this, it was for an event actually. And this is like a spiritual fair. And all of these people are there, and you kind of sit down and you do like really quick readings. They're 20 minutes usually. Some they can choose to do 40 or 60, but most people are doing 20. So it's like 20 minutes done, 20 minutes done, 20 minutes done. It's person after person after person. That's when I was supposed to start doing past life tarot readings for people. So
that's when you had this situation with that woman next to in the next stand.
Yeah, the woman who was a narcissist and who attacked me right off the bat. And this very, very interesting, very somewhat stressful, very challenging situation. But also it was kind of really the perfect way for me, because I didn't have time to think about or to doubt it or to really worry about any of it, right? I was just going and doing it.
And it really, as from what you said last time about the story, it really put you in like the spot for like, okay, I gotta it like empowered you in a way that you had that situation. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like I have to. It's kind of like do or die, right? I'm not gonna let this woman
Do you
defeat
have?
me.
You said you use the same deck. It's like the same physical deck or the same like type of deck that you've been
It's
using.
this. It's the same type of deck. It's the same physical deck for, I'll say, probably at least 2 decades. I did have one deck, and then I burned it. That's a whole other story. But when I started doing tarot again after a short lapse, I went back to the same deck. So this deck I've had for a very long time, but I've actually had 2 different versions of this same
which
deck.
one? Which deck is it that you use?
It's the Handel deck. It's Haindl. Handel.
Well, I don't know about it.
It's not very commonly.
I have this one next to me, the Marseille deck.
Oh yeah, I've heard of this.
I use mostly the Rider-Waite, but it's not here right now. So let me look up the one you're mentioning. It kind of like it sounds kind of like Lord of the Rings type of word. I'm like the city.
Oh, it's actually not a bad description for it. I love the Handel deck because it is it draws from so many different traditions. You know, each of the suits has a sort of region and ethnic and you know, cultural background that it draws upon. So the stones, for example, are Northern Native American. The wands are you know, Indian. The swords are Egyptian, and the cups are Northern, you know, Irish or Celtic. So it's really neat. I love that aspect. It also involves runes. It involves the I Ching. It involves astrology. So there's really so much layered in every single card. There's a lot of meaning to draw from. And what I really love is, just like me, Handel and Rachel Pollock, the 2 people who worked together to collaborate to create this deck, they did not follow any rules. They didn't have, you know, this, clearly they have some, you know, connection to the tradition of tarot. You can see all the similar major arcana cards. You can see that we obviously have the suits and everything, but there's a couple major arcana cards that are not in the same sequence as most decks have traditionally done. And so they've taken some liberties to switch around. And like I do, they just trusted their intuition and guidance. And when their guides and allies were saying, actually, this card needs to be this, they were like, okay, I mean, that's what we're being told. So that's what we're going to do.
One that pops up here is the Alchemy Major Arcana. And I see that they use, what's this, Hebrew letters, Hebrew alphabet?
Yeah, they have the
runes,
Hebrew alphabet.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
Yeah.
Runes
and if you look at,
are Celtic in origin, or is it more like
they're Norse, so they're Northern European. Yeah. And so if you look at the minor arcana, you'll see the I Ching is on every single non-court card as well. So all of the deck incorporates different aspects, and they're just beautiful, artistic. I love that the art is also very it's not really impressionistic, but it's impressionistic enough that you can really, when you're drawing any given card, you can get something new out of it, which is really how it should be. You know, when we have this idea that each of these cards should be memorized and that each of them means one thing and this is what it is, it's very limiting again. So you could be doing a reading for someone and their specific energy and this specific placement in this layout and their specific question they have, and now this card, those are all coming together to inform you, right? Instead of you just saying like, this one always means this. Well, there's some other flavor of a similar meaning that could be wanting to be expressed here.
What a beautiful, and that's really deck, really
very beautiful. And that's really suits the way that I work and the way that I do readings too. And so it's very serendipitous that I found this deck first on accident. It's very suiting. So yeah, I started doing these past life readings, you know, in that same way, like, nope, you're just going to do it and you're just going to figure it out. And I didn't have anyone teaching me. I didn't have an example to go off of. I just had my own experience and understanding of, you know, how to work with tarot, and then, you know, what can come out from it. And so I just kind of crafted a layout that works for me. And I started doing these readings, and they're very, very powerful. And, you know, I'll just say too, that I already had experience working with people with their past lives in healing ceremonies and guidance sessions. And sometimes in readings, they would come up as well in regular readings. So it wasn't just like it was out of the blue either, right? I had this sort of background of experience. So as I'm doing these readings for people, it was a similar sort of experience of how I sort of received the understanding of who and what they were. And so, that makes it a lot easier. I think it might be hard for someone who doesn't have that experience or doesn't have as much experience with tarot to just sit down and try to do a past life reading. And I don't know, everyone's tapped in a different way, so it might also be very easy, but that's just a note, I guess, on my specific situation.
And so why should someone get or what's the benefit of getting a past life tarot reading? What's the benefit at all of knowing anything about a potential or possible past life? Even just thinking, okay, we're all oneness. So my past life, in a way, it is my past life, but it's also the past life of everybody else. So, but I understand there's more like branches, let's say, and I'm this soul, I guess, incarnate in this body is more closely connected to a particular past life than perhaps your soul or somebody else's soul, I guess. So I understand there is a certain affinity to the energy that's inhabiting each incarnate body, but why would it be important for somebody to remember something from a past life?
Yeah, it's a good question. The way I look at it too is like our consciousness is moving somewhat linearly, right? And so it's like if I was reading a series of books and then I just handed you book 3 from that series and you had never heard of it or read any of it, and you'd start reading it and you'd be like, I don't relate to this, I don't understand it, but I do because I just read the other ones, right? And past lives are kind of like that. Like the energy of it is still fresh with us and we're still carrying it in our consciousness and our mind. And honestly, it can manifest physically as well. So, people who are reading auras or even just reading your physical energy structure, they can find things too that are like stuck, right? And they've been here for how long? Maybe many lifetimes. You're carrying that with you when you reincarnate. And you're manifesting it again, and you create situations, you create patterns that are similar, and you sit there and you go, why am I experiencing this in life, and this is so hard, and like I don't deserve this. And it's like, well, you're actually the one creating it, and you carried it with you through many lifetimes. So if you really want to stop doing that, one of the ways to heal that is to look into your past lives. The trauma usually is what it is that you have from that past life, and to see how it's recreating a similar pattern. And it just helps. Anytime we have more understanding of why or what, we have a little bit more clarity of therefore what we're going to do about it. And the readings I do always have suggestions as well. It's like, here's kind of how, here's the struggles you're having, and here's kind of how you can look at how to release that and how to start working on that. It's not usually like it's just done. You just see that past life and just go, oh, okay, cool, I get it now, and everything's perfect, right? It's usually there are some things we do have to start working on, and we see the sort of echoes and the reverberations of that pattern in this life, and we see how we're making the same situation again, or we're having the same sorts of relationships again, and then we start to understand, like, oh yeah, I really am doing this to myself, and I can choose something different. Part of it is always going to be the healing of the emotional, traumatic, I guess, signature of those events, right? That's still riding somewhere in your heart or your soul. That's maybe the hard part. That's maybe the harder work of it, is then, healing the emotional side of it. But the readings I do always have suggestions about how to do that, right? Like, let's bring it into the practical and let's make it something that is actually useful. It does actually affect your day-to-day lived experience, so that you can really transform your life. And that's the benefit of it. I very rarely have, just happy, positive stories come through. And they're almost always, traumatic and hard. And I actually had this experience with myself. I started spontaneously remembering past lives when I was somewhat young, and I started to understand what they were. And I think it's on life 7 now that I've spontaneously had recall of. And every time it's been the most horribly traumatic thing I could imagine. Like, no wonder I forgot. I don't want to remember the really, really bad things for me. And I finally, I asked another healer and, psychic and friend, I was like, why is this? Why am I only remembering? Have I only had really horrifying lives? Like, this is not a fun thing to imagine, that we just cycle through and trauma after trauma. And she was like, no, you've had plenty of positive lives. And she helped me actually remember some of those too, which was really healing for me. I needed to know that we have positive lives too. But she was like, the reason why the traumatic ones are coming back is exactly this. This is what we have to heal. This is what we need to, work on releasing and letting go of. And that's why it's not because it's all dark back there and every life sucks and everything is horrible. No, these are just the things you need to heal. Just like if in this life you went to counseling or therapy, it's not like you'd be sitting there talking about like all the happy times, right? The point is to dive into the garbage and the darkness and the shadow work and really dig that stuff up and release it, So it's very similar to that. And so a lot of the times these readings are happening, people, the things coming up are also dark and hurtful and not fun.
Yeah, it's so empowering to know that you've gone through. I mean, so one of the ways that I try to frame what's happening, why we're here, what we're doing, who we are. One of the ways is that I see ourselves kind of like living two lives at the same time, and it's like one of the lives is what's the word? It's kind of embedded inside the other one.
Yeah.
And so that would be our human, this current incarnation. It's embedded in the like overarching life of our soul, we could call it, and then it's kind of like the soul dips its toes in the water and brings them out, and each incarnation is one of those, and each life that you live then gives something in return to the larger life, which then maybe we could say, and that one is just the toe of another larger one that's doing the same with different souls and so forth and so on. But each time you leave the body, you take something back to your higher self, and you take everything actually. And some of those things are so hard to process that even your higher self, when it returns, chooses to kind of block certain aspects so that you can function in this world. Because imagine if we're thinking about past lives being true, which for some people is a very big leap, but imagine remembering that you were hanged or burned alive or whatever. You would wake up as a baby, you would be born and you I don't know, you couldn't you'd be like angry and sad and frustrated from the moment you're born. So those parts of the mind are separated and stored in what we call the unconscious, right? And so we're living these two lives at the same time and bringing information back, and even when we incarnate, even though it's stored in the subconscious or the unconscious, it's here with us, and unfortunately it can affect our lives. And I'm remembering one, like you mentioned how we carry stuff from these past lives, and I remember, and even in the physical body. So I remember when I did an Akashic Records reading for someone that they had. I didn't know anything about their physical body or their pain, but suddenly what felt just like a past life came for me, very very visually, with eyes closed, and I could see that in this past life she was a man, and she had received an arrow, I think it was, on her shoulder, on his shoulder at the time. And then I told her this, and she started crying, and she told me, yeah, in this life I have this very strong pain in my shoulder, and I've never understood where it comes from, or I've never been able to like completely heal it. But on that day she kind of got something that for someone else it could be like very very supernatural, mystic, woo-woo, but for her it was healing to understand, oh, there is a cause to this. It's not just something that's like completely out of my hands and I am impotent in the face of this. There's actually a cause, and when you know the cause of things, then you're able to, in some way, sometime, find a road or a path to healing the thing, you know, because I remember one of the teachings that I received from my Taoist teachers is that the common man focuses, and they said this is kind of one of the main problems that we have today, is that the common man focuses on the effects, whereas the Buddhas and the enlightened ones focus on the cause. And that was very, very powerful.
Yeah, I mean, if you really think about it, it's exceptionally empowering. Like you're talking about, to have these memory recalls, to have people who can read the Akashic records for you, or, you know, do a past life reading to bring this back. It's very empowering because you get to then now have a higher level of consciousness about what it is you're here to heal and do. And when you think about it, 100%, I'm not exaggerating. And I get that not everyone is here yet, but this is true. This is what I've seen over and over again. Every reading I've done, every healing I've done, every, you know, every single burst of insight of it, all of it has underscored this truth that 100% of your life, 100% of your physical body, 100% of your thoughts, 100% of your emotional body, all of it is karma. And karma just means cause and effect. So yeah, if you're reeling here in the effect and you're like, this thing sucks and that thing is this, and oh, this one makes me happy, and so that's cool, but not that thing over there, you're ignoring this huge giant motor behind you that's driving all of this. That's the causal. You can jump back there and start driving it, right? You can jump back there and you can see what is actually causing all of this. What is it in my thoughts? What is it in my emotional body, right? What is it about me? Where is it in my physical body, right? I'm going to remove that, actually. I'm going to let that part go, and I'm going to start cultivating this other thing so that I can purposely create these specific effects, a different karma, right? Karma is just inertia, and it's just cause and effect. So our past lives do have stuff that we didn't finish with, good and bad, right?
You know what?
And
Karma feels like, now that you're putting it that way, karma feels like something that includes evolution. You know, it's like we think, or scientists, or the general understanding is that evolution is like the driving force behind life and whatever. But what is the driving force behind evolution? And it's cause and effect, which is said in another language, karma. And
yeah. And I think it's really empowering too to have this view of karma, which is the correct view of karma. All of the ancient teachings, Taoist and Buddhist and all of these, they all look at it the same way. We just somehow have started to interpret it as punishment. Yeah, right? Karma is punishment. You're either creating good karma or bad karma, and it's like punishment or virtue. And it's not that. It doesn't care. It's not labeling things. It's not saying this one's good, that one's bad. It's just saying
natural selection.
And it's neutral and objective. Yeah, it's just responding. It's just like if you high five someone, you feel it, right? That's just the effect of the cause. Like there's no judgment in it.
We're just looking. Sorry, I'm so excited about the subject. I'm talking over. Sorry. But it's just we've started looking at it through, or our culture has looked at it through the filter of this I don't know what to call it,
guilt and shame.
Catholic Christian Bible or misinterpretation even of those teachings, of course. So it's through a misinterpretation of the Western spiritual teachings. They've looked at something from the East and misinterpreted that. So it's like what's the name, telephone, or
the telephone game.
It's telephone. In Spanish we call it teléfono descompuesto, so like broken telephone, we call it. And also when you are descompuesto, you're also like when you can't hold your shit, what's it called? So it's more like shitty telephone. Or leaky telephone.
It is like that. Well, and I think there's something nefarious in that too, that is intentionally trying to control people by increasing their guilt and their shame and their feeling that they are being punished or deserve punishment, or, you know, that the God or whatever the force is you imagine being above you is angry with you, and, you know, you don't deserve love. Like all of that is such garbage and definitely controlling, right? You definitely aren't empowered. You definitely don't understand that there's almost nothing but love for you out there, but you just keep choosing to like stab yourself and like cut off your own like limbs and just wander around and go, why do I hurt so bad? And it's like, well, I mean, you got to stop doing that. You have to stop creating the causes that lead to that, and it is hard. I'm not saying it's easy, and I still get stuck in the victim mentality as well. But I'd rather move into this empowering paradigm where I understand how much choice I have over all levels of my experience. And when you were talking about that sort of oversoul, right, and it's dipping its toes in this like fractal sort of way of being, I have control of that too. Control might even be the wrong word, right? But I have strong presence and connection with how that goes as well, and that's the most empowering, right? And that's actually what I think most spiritual paths are inviting us to work towards or to move towards, and we call it enlightenment sometimes, or ascendance sometimes, right? And it's really this idea that we will one day have such presence of thought and mind that we'll be so in the seat of that motor of karma that we actually will almost be one with, if not actually one with, that higher level of soul, and not just this little thing that imagines itself just like a toe in a pond, right? and that's actually the goal. So this understanding and this level of empowerment is leading more quickly and directly that direction.
I think that's, when I started doing the podcast, etc., you start kind of wondering after some time, okay, what's like the core of my message? I've talked with people who like, they come on and they are like very clear on A, B, C, D, E. This is the things that they represent and the things that the message that they want to carry. And I'm still growing into mine, or learning mine, or integrating it, etc. As I go on my own healing journey, and one of the aspects, at least that's clear to me, is that I want us to all start to remember. I don't know how, but through these conversations, it's a first step to start to remember exactly what you were saying just now, that we are those two things happening at the same time, and to start kind of like creating this bridging, I guess, that veil of forgetting, creating a kind of reconnection to the oversoul, or the higher self, or the spirit, the soul, whatever people might want to call it, and to kind of live life. So I describe this body perspective. I call it kind of like the first person perspective, because you're like in those games where you just see the player hands, but then you have another perspective, which I call it the third person perspective, because it's not like it can see itself, because it's not physical, but it can see a manifestation of itself, or sometimes in Buddhism they use a word, an emanation of itself, which is this first person perspective body, and it can see it from an objective perspective. And so karma, it's already moving, and sometimes it feels hard, because okay, you recognize everything we've been talking about, and you from the first person perspective, you think, okay, so now that I understand it, I'm free from karma. But there's one small the small letter at the bottom of the contract is that karma is already running, and it's running all the time. And so past karma hasn't flowered yet, some of the past karma. So there will still be like difficulties in your life, or obstacles to overcome, challenges to succeed over, that is, somebody else might think, oh, okay, so then it wasn't useful to know anything about my past, because I'm still hitting the wall or whatever. But what's interesting is that at a certain point you are able to like stop creating more karma, let's say, or stop creating as much karma. Let's hope for perfection, but let's be kind of realistic as well. And so those new karmas that you start creating, or that, I'm trying to express it very neutrally, but those new karmas that those seeds that are being planted in your mind will give purer fruit, let's say, in the future. And not every karma has like the same what's the word, blooming time, let's say, right? So if you plant a particular kind of tree, it will take some time. Another kind of tree might be faster, or even hundreds of years before it gives, I don't know, a single leaf or whatever. And karma works very similarly. So we can't judge from the effects exactly where we are in our progress, but we can judge from the cause that we plant today, and tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, how we're doing, and not be. This is something that I think the law of attraction talks about. There's this. The reality is kind of like this mirror, and we are trying to make the mirror smile before we smile, right? And get our manifestations before we incarnate the resonant vibration of it. And yeah, it's talking about, let's create causes that we know will give bountiful, delicious mangoes and yes. Fruit. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really well said and described. And it's part of why people will start anything. I mean, we even see this if we're like, I'm going to start working out. And then we're like, man, my muscles aren't getting big fast enough. I'm angry. I'm going to stop working out. And it's like, well, that's silly, right? Like, I mean, that if you keep going, the karma of this situation is that you will develop, stronger muscles, and your body will start to change. If you give up, it won't. And we do that with everything. We're like, well, I've been doing good and I am nice to people. And so why is this thing happening to me? I don't deserve this. And you may not remember the cause that caused this specific karma, right? But especially if you understand karma and you understand where you're at, you can choose to go through even this hardship with a little bit more grace, right? And like you said, without planting new seeds that are going to create the same situation again, right? And doing your best to forgive or let go or hold your boundaries or whatever it is that is best and most good, true, and beautiful in that situation. And that is the best thing you can do, right? Like you said, you can't just stop instantly all future karma from manifesting. It's coming already, right? You've already planted it in multiple other lifetimes, in this lifetime, in 1,000 ways you probably haven't even considered yet, both in your thoughts, right? In your heart, and in your past actions, and all kinds of things. So you really can't expect what the future is going to hold from you based on where you're at right now, or what you think you're at right now. I sometimes am like, man, am I still dealing with this thing? And it'll be a thing that I swear I talked about it in therapy. I've done like spiritual healing around it. I've done all of this work on it. And here it is again. But each time, if I really let go of that mindset and I'm like, okay, well, what is left here? What is this here to remind me of, or to teach me, or to help me with? I see, oh yeah, there actually was still another part of me that was, hardened to this thing, or hadn't yet forgiven that person, or, there still is something there. So I always say to people, like, look, if we were done, right? If we were perfect, if we had solved this whole thing and had it figured out, we wouldn't be here. We would be somewhere else having a completely different experience, but here we are. So we know there's something left to perfect, to heal from, to move through, and all of that. And that there's nothing wrong with that. There's so much that's enjoyable and beautiful and good in that, and even when we're sometimes crying in the darkness and we're whatever, like we're done with that, and there's this new clarity. We're like, oh, actually, everything's way better now than it was before. I'm kind of glad I had to go through this purification or this release. I feel much better than I ever have before. I didn't even know I felt bad until now I feel better. And that, I mean, those are beautiful experiences of life, and I wouldn't not want to have those.
And I have two things. So it's kind of very, very flimsy here. No, I'm sorry, I lost them.
They'll come back. Yeah. They'll come back in the perfect time.
Oh, I know. Yeah, very good. When we're still here, and like kind of demystifying that good and bad thing that we were talking about, that pain and suffering and you're in a prison here, and there's the evil demiurge or whatever that's keeping you in prison. You know, the karma, it's like those things, they are not like good and bad, and they're still present here because you chose. It's in part through karma that you choose to come into this particular life where you're going to have those challenges, and having those challenges implies having the possibility of overcoming them. You know, it's you're not going to be able to overcome and learn. So the basic thing that I have understood, that why we're here, is to learn, you know, that this oversoul that is not physical creates, let's say, or emanates a physical body to learn what it feels like to be physical, and there's infinite possibilities of feeling and of living and of being. So okay, one, for example, is me. Okay, so we come here to learn certain lessons that are connected to the vibration or the karma of this incarnation. And oh wow, I'm still dealing with this after all this inner work and therapy and whatever. And some people might say, oh, I'm being punished. But to understand karma differently, it's, you still haven't gotten the full nectar of this lesson, let's say. And the second thing was this: every time you come back to the thing of like, oh, again this thing is presenting itself in my life, I thought I had overcome this. Every time you were doing, I think the best image for this for me is the spiral. So we're coming back to the same point, but from a slightly different perspective. We are a little bit, we could say, higher in the spiral that's going up. And so each time we are able to perceive a new lesson from the same or a very similar situation. So those are the two things. So not looking at the karma as punishment, but actually as there's this exam that you still haven't completely finished or passed. And unfortunately, it's not just you do the exam once and you're done. You either save it or you fail it, but actually you come back to the exam different times and fill in the blanks of the things that you didn't know the first time you took the exam. So you're able to is it you save an exam, you complete it, you pass. You're able to pass the exam by taking it multiple times and filling the details of your answers, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels a lot like that. And it's really, you know, again, it's, I feel like it's a beautiful opportunity. If we were just, oh, I mean, I think if you want to imagine like a god, right? And a source or a god, and he's like, okay, I'm going to create all these humans now. And here we are and created. Well, and we're like, well, why couldn't he just create us perfect? Well, if we were perfect, we would be him. So why would he just create us? It'd just be him still, right? Like his goal was perhaps to just create new things. And then the idea of free will is that those new things can do anything. They have infinite creative ability. They can do anything. And just like a baby, they have to learn which of those things is a good choice and which isn't a good choice. Not because he decided like you'll be punished if you do this, but just like a baby, if you walk up, like I watched my little nephew crawl under a table, right? And we were like, okay, be careful. There's like a table above you. Like, don't hit your head. And you know, be careful. And then he like hit his head and he cried. And it's like, well, yeah, you have to learn that when you go under the table there, you're going to hit your head if you move up. And no one can make you do that. We couldn't just place that knowledge in your head as much as we wanted to help you avoid the pain. Because next time you're under something, we hope that, you know, you also remember this and you don't stand up. And especially if there's like spikes up there someday or something worse, like we really don't want you to just like not think about what's above your head. You have to learn to think of that. So now you know that lesson and now you'll never do that again. You know, and this is the same with God. He's like, yeah, do whatever you want. Your choices sometimes are going to be painful and they're going to cause you pain and suffering for yourself and others. But I'm always going to have the situation ready in which you get to heal that too, in which you get to choose something else. And then you're going to be the being who knows for sure, I never make this mistake again. I know what it is and I don't want it. I choose something else. I have free will. I don't think there's much more beautiful than that, right? That I can do anything I want. I'm perfectly free. I'm in a safe universe. There's actually no way to make such a brutal or grave mistake that I can't recover from it, because I get all these lives to try. I get all these other people to help me. I get all these different opportunities to really get it, to get the knowledge, to get the lesson, to understand the thing. And I get to just keep choosing better and better and better. And then when I finally do make it to whatever, right? Whatever ascended or whatever enlightened or higher state, I did it completely on my own. I chose every bit of it. And I truly know at a level that nothing could take away from me all of the things that went into creating that. That's beautiful. I wouldn't want it any other way. In fact, it's pretty epic.
And then you reincarnate, you stand under a table and you hit your head again.
Wait, I thought I learned this.
Yeah, that's funny, right? That we learn all these very transcendental lessons, but there's certain physical lessons that you keep, there's no escaping them. It's like even you become older, and I don't know, there's a window open and you sit under the window, and when you get up, you forgot the window was there. And some things we never learn, but it's and you know, the free will thing, we have free will, but again, since karma is kind of the driving force behind evolution, some actions, and it's cause and effect, some actions have a particular set of effects. And so it's not like punishment for doing the wrong thing. It's just the consequence of doing the thing that causes the consequence. It's not somebody's out to get you, or you are useless, or you're worthless. It's just learn that certain things have certain consequences, certain actions, certain thoughts, even certain words, and learn which ones you prefer to continue doing throughout your life. If you like the consequence, if you're kind of like a masochist, then go do the masochist thing and you'll get the masochist reward. But if you would rather live life in a, I don't know, I don't mean to judge any masochist, but if you want to be in a more kind of peaceful state, or the more peaceful state that you can create for yourself, then learn from those mistakes, do other things, and I think better feeling thoughts. I think Abraham, you know Abraham, I think that he would say, or they, or whatever, would say, think better feeling thoughts. It's like sometimes the recipe seems so simple that we take so long to digest it.
Yeah, because sometimes this is the other side of karma that is really hard for people, I think, is that we think of it as actions, and I love the examples of like instant karma, right? Like there was a little video, a guy like runs up to a street dog and he's going to kick the dog, and you're like, oh my God. And he kicks so hard, it would have really hurt the dog, right? But the dog kind of just like happens to move. He wasn't even looking or aware, but he just kind of turns around to see like what's going on behind me. And just him moving was enough of a move that this really hard, fast kick missed and hit nothing. And so the momentum of it carried this guy up and he landed on his own head. And you're kind of like, yeah, instant karma, right? We think of karma like this, where it's just actions. We do something and then like something happens to us. But a lot of karma, I'd say most of karma actually, is in our mind and in our heart. And that's a lot harder for people. Like it's easy for us to say, oh, I'm going to stop going to the bar and meeting my boyfriends there, because when I meet boyfriends at the bar, they're always like self-destructive alcoholics or something, right? Like there's an easy thing to sort of eventually understand. That's an action-based, sort of thing. But then you might find like, wait, I'm not meeting boyfriends at the bar anymore, but I'm still only finding self-destructive alcoholics. Like, why is this happening to me? Well, the reason you were attracting those people wasn't because of the actions and the location you were in, is because of your mindset and your emotional, construction, right? And those vibrations are moving out and attracting to you. That's a lot harder to work with and to deal with and to heal. And that's really what I'm always pointing at, is like the real work of life. Our behaviors matter, our actions matter. Maybe not going to the bar is a really good choice, but there's something else under it that also has to shift, right? You can't just force yourself into, right? We see this when people quit addictions and drugs and whatever, that they then sometimes just replace it with something else that's almost equally as destructive, even if it's not chemical based or drug based. Maybe they're now watching TV 72 hours a day, whatever, all day, every day, right? Or something. And that's just as destructive. They've just replaced it with something else because there's something in their mind, in their heart, that is what actually needs to shift and heal. And it's a lot harder to get to. And that's kind of the real work that I am hoping to help and seem to be able to help people do more effectively at the sort of spiritual level, right? Because again, like we're saying, 100% of everything we experience is actually coming from the spiritual level. That the soul is at the top, right? And everything else trickles down from that. So we can start to affect it by our actions, by our thoughts, by our emotional. Those are the things that are easier for us to access. But this is what is actually, right? Our soul up here is actually the real boss and the real creator and weaver of our life, our experiences, and the things that we're manifesting. And so we can't just blunt force our soul into a different place.
So do you think we've explored enough the idea of healing past lives? Do you think there's something else maybe we could add to the pot? And yeah,
we could give a concrete example, maybe might help people.
Yeah.
And so I'll just use one of my own, and I don't know if I've shared some of my own on the show before, so I could choose a different one if I have. I have the example
on this show. No, I don't
Yeah.
think you've shared any.
Okay, so I'll just pick. I'll pick this one. This is a good one. It has a physical aspect, an emotional, and a mental aspect. So I had this past life memory come to mind, and I experienced this life. And in this life, I was, this wasn't that long ago either. This would maybe like the 70s, like in linear time, the life right before this one, right? And I don't know that that's how our soul experiences it. That's, timeline wise, that would have maybe been true. So I was this woman, and I was very beautiful, exceptionally beautiful woman, and I knew it. And I was also exceptionally controlling and very like elitist and, judgmental and cruel. And I had this man who was shorter than me and smaller than me, and I looked down on, and I treated poorly, and he was just madly in love with me, and he would do anything I told him to do. And I just used him for what felt like decades. In my memory at that time, that's what it felt like. So he had just been around and just hanging around, and I just been using and abusing him and just controlling him. And we seemed like criminals. Perhaps we were just, drug runners, or it seemed also like we would sort of work together to trap people into situations and then rob them. So this was our sort of shtick together, and this is what we did. So we were in a bar, which was very normal for us. And, me, not like I'm protected, like no one can harm me. I'm on top of everything. Like this guy is going to do whatever I say. And that sort of energy. I'm walking through the bar, and all of a sudden I hear something break behind me. And I start to turn around, and then I just feel this stab of impalement on my shoulder back here, my right shoulder, underneath my shoulder blade. I won't go into the details of the rest, but this man who I had been controlling for my entire life then proceeded to murder me in really horrible ways. And as he's murdering me, I'm like shocked. I'm like, what? You can't do this to me. I control you. Like, I own you. There's no way you could do this to me. This is, and I was really shocked. And then obviously I'm being murdered. And I have this whole memory come back, and so many things now make sense to me in my life, right? I've always had this struggle with knowing I'm not going to be above anybody. I don't control anybody. I won't let myself even pretend to start to control or, anybody. So I came into this life with that, like, I'm not doing that ever again. That went really poorly for me, right? I'm not better than anyone, and I don't control anyone. So I've always had this like really deep need and desire almost to just like not do that and be really aware of it. And at the same time, I have the urge to feel superior to people and to show them when I'm superior to them, and to therefore start to control them. So I'm aware of it, and I'm always have had this sort of internal struggle and battle. So that's really interesting, right? It comes from this past life. Then I have this inexplicable cluster of pain in this shoulder that, there's lots of things going on with my back and my shoulder, but this is one of them that just nobody understands, nobody knows for sure. And And, you know, and
That's
I,
crazy how I mentioned the thing about the shoulder from the past life, right?
yeah,
And
right. When you
another
were saying that,
funny,
I was like, huh.
yeah, another funny aspect is how the people that come to do readings with you, they are also teaching something to you and a kind of lesson and a reflection for you, because I also have on my right shoulder a kind of like weird pain that I remember one day I woke up with this pain, and I don't know where it came from. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. And it makes me wonder if that's like a location, you know, because I know a lot of people have sort of mapped the body out of like, if you have something here, here's what it means. And I wonder if that's kind of has to do with like control or elitism or judgment or something. That would be interesting to look into. But I instantly saw those parallels. Like, this is where I have this pain. Then I thought about it more, and I thought, I wonder if when this is sort of flaring up and hurting, if I'm doing some of that, right? If I'm being like that energy, and it's reminding me, it's trying to remind me, like, don't do this, you're going to get that stab again, and then everything's going to go poorly, right? And so I started noticing this, you know, when it flares up. And yeah, 100% of the time when I'm getting a flare up of pain here, it's I'm being a little too like what controlling of others, or like really self-important, like I'm really cool, everybody should know how cool I am, right? Like that sort of level of ego. So it's actually really handy. Now it's become this tool where my shoulder starts hurting and I can go, okay, am I doing it? Oh yeah, I am. Like, even in very subtle ways, and I can sort of step back and release that. So you can also sort of see how it's this gift, right? It's this gift to understand this pain. It's a gift to understand where it comes from, because it helps me now more subtly, more precisely choose it in ways that, I mean, most people who have known me in my life and would hear me describing this would be like, you're not elitist or judgmental, but I am. I see where I am, right? I see where the little threads, and the reason I see such even subtle, sometimes less subtle and more overt, but even those subtle things, is because of this gift, right? Because of this trauma and pattern. And so I've been successful now in most of my life in not recreating that, right? And that's my karma, is to have to sort of constantly be on the vigilance against that sort of activity and that energy, and that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. I would like to not ever be like that again. That would be great, right? I don't want to be that person.
That's a great example. Thank you so much for opening up on that. It can be very very, let's say, very personal, you know, these past life stories, because we don't truly understand enough about that to always feel comfortable with sharing those things, especially publicly, you know, in a forum like this. So yeah, I appreciate and I honor the fact that you went there and shared it. I'm looking at there's this thing that I don't know, for some reason in the as we're winding down, I just want to mention a couple more things, and then we can move on to the second hour, where we can explore how we can bring stuff from our past lives into this one, you know, reawaken certain gifts, especially spiritual gifts, but probably also physical gifts can be reawakened, of course. And I'm looking at a thing here that is used in, oh yeah, this is what I was saying. For some reason, I don't know why this isn't as known in the English speaking world. Maybe it is, but it's not a very publicly mentioned thing that I've seen. Whereas in my culture, you know, in Spanish, in the Spanish speaking countries, it's very normal to go to tools like this, which is a dictionary. They call it the emotional dictionary, or the dictionary of illnesses, etc. So it's like what you were asking before, like, oh, what is it that the shoulder could be mapped to emotionally or mentally, etc. Oh, you have it there? You have
I
one
have
like that?
something here that is similar,
Yeah.
maybe.
So I'm looking into this one to see what he. Oh, Louise, hey, cool. Does she have like a list of this thing can be connected to this? And for some reason, it's not something that I've heard too much talked about in English, but it's very common kind of knowledge in between or among the mystically inclined people in Spanish speaking countries. So I'm gonna look at that, and on the second half we can talk about maybe what connection there is with the shoulder, and also this other aspect of bringing stuff back into our current life.
Yeah, that sounds perfect.
You want to add something there?
No, I found shoulder here, but I'll save it for the next hour.
Awesome. Yeah. We'll see how they synchronize with the information I found. All right, so everybody, thank you so much for watching. Lindsey, do you want to share your website or any social media links that people can find you in?
Yeah, it's perfect for everybody to just go to rogueways.org. Everything is there. My socials are there. The links to the show are there that I do, and also my books that I've written and channeled through. The sessions, if you want to do a one-on-one session with me, the links to that is all there. So it's the best place to go is just rogueways.org.
Beautiful, amazing. And for me, you can find me on Instagram at @atmanrafa, and we can chat over there. I really like having conversations with people, or you can just leave a comment in the comment section below. I'll have links for Lindsey's website, rogueways.org. I'll have links on the description, and yeah, you can get in touch with me if you're interested in Akashic Records readings or sound healing sessions. I'm offering those, and please stay tuned and come back for part 2, which is coming up right now. Bye.